I'm on TV. Ah. Thank you very much. Well, hello everybody. Welcome to Tom's Guitar Show. Excuse me. So this is Tom's Guitar Show. We call it that because it's, well, they call me Guitar Tom because I'm often seen with a guitar. And they call me on the phone. They ask me, they say, "Hey man, what's your show about anyway?" And I say, "Well, it's about an hour about guitars, guitar playing, all things guitaristic." So normally I'd say you could call in, but you can't call in now because this is the end of the month, the last Tuesday, and the last Tuesday of every month we cablecast live from Uptown Bill's Coffee House here in the corner of South Dubuque and Lafayette Streets down by the tracks, not far from downtown Iowa City. So if you're hanging around, it's Tuesday shortly after 6, you don't know what to do with yourself and looking for a little adventure, come on down and be part of the audience. So anyway, people ask me what my show is about, and about an hour, of course, but it's also about guitars and all guitar-related topics. You know, so I thought I'd play a little guitar. Now, in the coming months, there should be some interesting things. I'm not sure what we're going to do next month. Probably just fool around. But I believe in March we're going to have a jazz band, which is started by students at Coe College, which is Coe College, of course, is a small four-year liberal arts college in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, 20-some miles up the street from us, 35 kilometers, something like that, you know, not far. And I actually teach there on Tuesdays, come to think of it. But anyway, so one of my students is a jazz guitar player, young fella, and he founded a jazz band. And so I've coerced them to come on the show probably in March. And in April, we're going to have a real classical guitar blowout and extravaganza with classical guitarists, ensemble playing. But this month, January, we have only me. So I'm sorry. And maybe a bit of reading. And perhaps a bit of something from the man in the apron over here. We can tell you're in charge. Possibly. Okay. All right. All right. So I'm going to play this one. Basically, I'm sort of thinking about Coe College because I was there today, teaching and stuff, and walking through the hallowed halls of Marquee Hall. There's a joke, you know, where you go like, if you can't get into college, go to Coe. Did I do that in public? I'm sorry. No, but Banjo Dave told me that one. But okay, so on February 6th, which is a Friday, we're going to have a faculty recital. And since I'm a faculty member, and I've been laid off from my usual Friday gig at the Tuscan Moon and cut back to only Saturdays, I've got nothing to do but play at the faculty recital. Oh yeah. I'm going to play the faculty recital. But I want to do something subversive. I had intended to play as an accompanist to Brazilian music, having my boss, the chairman of the department, who's a clarinet player, play some choral music, and then the bass teacher, string bass teacher, you know, bull fiddle to you, plays some bossa nova with me, and he'd play the melody, and I do the, you know, the accompaniment, and he'd be boom, 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 you know, the bass. But both, I couldn't, neither one are going to help me out with this, so it's just me. So to be subversive, I'm going to kind of run through what I'm going to do with the faculty recital. I'm going to walk out with this guitar. Now this is a La Patrie, which is part of the Godin guitar empire in Quebec, you know, Canada. And some people think that they speak French all over Canada, but no, they just speak French in the much of Quebec and bits of Acadia on the coast. So this is from the French-speaking Canada, and this is this guitar is, I mean, it's new, fairly new, but it's designed after the 19th century style, the parlor-sized guitar. Guitars got bigger starting in the 1860s, and then, you know, and now the larger guitar has been ubiquitous for classical guitars. But this is what guitars used to be like, and this is a nice little guitar, except it has a pickup in it, which is pretty throaty. So I'm going to play something on this, and this is what I intend to start my little recital, my three pieces at the faculty recital with, is this guitar, and I'll play something for you. Thank you. Call that a Roomba. So anyway, yeah, it's kind of a nice. I've had a steel string guitar of the same size and shape for many years, and sorry, things are happening in the studio, or actually in the coffee house. But people say I look kind of funny. You know, I was like kind of a big guy playing this little tiny guitar. So I have another one I say that I've been playing for many years about the same size, so steel strings. And this is what guitars looked like 100 years ago or more. One of the things about commuting to Cedar Rapids is they have the Nespers Sign Company. They're on 380, I-380. And they always have corny jokes. The one on my way back today was, like, what did the father, the bison, say to his young bison, as he was going off to school? Bison. Yeah. So here's my plan. I'm going to do my gig, I'm going to walk out on the stage with this, and I'll play, well, see, the body of work I'm playing, usually I start out with a classical piece, and then I get a little kinky after that, start doing crazy things. Last semester, I finished up with a ukulele solo. I did, Malagueña, or whatever, which was kind of fun and everything. It was weird to have a ukulele, So I had a stagehand come and take my guitar, and a very respectable electric flamenco guitar, and hand me a ukulele, which some people call an ukulele, but I'm not from Hawaii, so I'll call it uke. Anyway, and so I was going to do this like a sort of bossa nova. This is a body of work that I call, well, it's a bunch of loops, which I call the art of looping. And my impression, my ambition was to do a CD or a record, the art of looping. And cooler heads prevailed, and my wife called it the table for two. It's kind of like my dinner music, restaurant music. But I wanted to call it the art of looping. So I have this series of loops that I've composed. Very derivative, by the way. I didn't derivative. I mean, I stole things from other people and put them together myself. But found objects, But anyway, so I had that. Hang on. So I wanted to do, start out with this guitar, and do one of my loops, and then. I'd have the stagehand come and take the guitar away from me and hand me this. People ask me why it's called a banjo. 'Cause that's what it sounds like. I'm going to tell the I have to tell a banjo joke while I'm trying to get it in tune. And, I'll turn on the reverb a second here. So, like the two banjo player jokes that I like, I guess, are how many banjo players does it take to screw in a light bulb? 5. 1 to screw it in and 4 more to sit around saying, that ain't the way Earl Scruggs did it. And, I have to say Scruggs because this is going to be, people who know banjo would know who Earl is. You don't have to say Scruggs, I mean, But did you know if I said Earl, would that be good enough for you, or would I have to say Scruggs? What do you think?
Earl would be enough, but
Earl would be enough for you?
you have to look around here. Look at your audience.
Oh. If I just said Earl, would that be good enough for you? See, do you know who Earl Scruggs was? No. See, there you go. See, they're level. Now, you know who Earl Scruggs was. I'm sure your long-suffering wife would know too, because of your, wouldn't necessarily have to know. Anyway, never mind. I shouldn't be talking to the audience like this. There's another one that people don't seem to get. And that's the, what did the banjo player get on his IQ test? Barbecue sauce. So, a lot of people don't get that one. So I think what I do when I do this gig, is I'd tune my banjo and like tell a couple of jokes. And then, do a little bit of that sort of banjo-y stuff, what you expect, a little frailing and a little like little picking. And then once I get it in tune, I'll start making a little bit of a loop for myself. So that's my plan, is to bring the banjo out, and of course, the music department in a little college like that, they teach classical music, and they have a pretty serious jazz program too, so they're pretty serious about the jazz, and so I figured I'd go and ruin everything, and I tell you, really, I'm trying to get fired. But but not for anything, disgusting, not for incompetence, and not for doing something like, morally repugnant, unless banjo is, maybe banjo is kind of see, a gentleman is someone who knows how to play the banjo, yet chooses not to. So, I'll have to tell that one too. Anyway, I like a banjo. The banjo is, well, one thing I like the bluegrass thing. It's fun to play bluegrass, well, when I was a boy, back in the olden days, you had the old Deliverance, right? And then you had the Bonnie and Clyde movie. With the Foggy Mountain Breakdown, and and that's what I would think about while I was driving too fast as a teenager. Was that So, but then, I learned more about the banjo, and of course, a lot of banjo history is very interesting in some ways, but also somewhat disturbing, because you look at pictures of banjo players from the earlier part of the 19th century, and it was the minstrel show, which was, of course, white people in blackface, and I believe what they used burnt cork. They would take a cork, from a bottle, and they would, burn it in a candle, and then put it on their face and paint their faces black, and then they'd paint their lips white, and wear white gloves and elaborate clothes, and they would act silly and do a caricature of what they thought black people looked like, and play the banjo. And of course, the banjo was originally based on an African instrument. There's one, I forget the name of it. I should probably learn my facts before I. This isn't a lecture. This is Tom's Guitar Show. I don't expect much, but anyway. But it's descended from an African instrument, and I think the African instrument actually had the high string on the other side, but it was made out of a gourd with like a goat skin stretched across it, and had a neck, and different numbers of strings depending on where it was from. But West Africa, where a lot of Americans came from, the hard way, and then the Americans who came here from Africa the hard way started making them themselves. I've read that they used pumpkins, but there are gourd banjos, and I have seen them. I've played gourd banjos. They're an interesting instrument. It's made out of a gourd with a skin stretched across it, and basically a stick with no frets. And so it was, but poor white people, and I keep mentioning this on the show because I find it very interesting that the history of slavery is very interesting. A lot of white people were enslaved, and had been up until the 1820s. Enslaved in other ways too, of course, but even like the ethnic cleansing of Ireland, and then Scotland and parts of Western England. And in other parts of Europe, people were driven out of their homes and forced into slavery. And some were, of course, indentured servants, bondsmen or whatever, who worked very hard and stuff, but they were given their freedom after a certain amount of time. But a lot of them were actually just slaves. There were like an uprising in Ireland in the 1600s, and all the prisoners of war were transported to the New World, basically to the Caribbean, to grow sugarcane. And they were slaves. They were not ever going to be free. They were going to die slaves. And then there were all these unsupported women and children left behind, and so they just rounded them up and transported them also. And then there were these. There's a breeding program to breed. The problem with the Irish is that they ain't no sunshine, so they didn't do well in the sun, working in the fields. They were called redlegs by the darker people who, and they were not as valuable as an African. So Africans were considered more useful and more valuable, but they were cheap. The Irish were cheaper, and the Scots and the Western English and other people were much less expensive. So Caribbean culture had a lot of a mixture. There's like a breeding program. They would breed Irish and Africans to develop a race of people who would work. So you see a lot of people in that area who don't look African, really. They look kind of half, and that's why. So that was a 200-year history, like 1820s to 1620s to 1820s. So anyway, so what I'm nattering on about is that the banjo was adopted by white people who were also poor, and it became a quintessentially American instrument. It became an American instrument in that it would change quite a bit from the sort of African origins to the one big change. I've seen these banjos, some historical ones, pictures of them in museums, and then replicas built. There were these small snare drums that were used in the Civil War by drummer boys. And drums, of course, were used to not only for just military parades, but also to signal infantry to advance or whatever. There were these drums and bugles were used to, because the black powder they used in their muskets and their rifles and so forth was very smoky, so you couldn't see anything. So you had these commands, and you drill the people with drums and horns you know. So after the war, Civil War, which is a big deal in American history, but also a big deal in American musical history, things happened. One thing was that there were all these drums, surplus drums. And so some of them were turned into banjos, which are like this, because a banjo has a drum head. Right? So you put a neck on it, some strings, and they start putting frets on it like a guitar had. And then it became, it became a different instrument. And after the Civil War era, from the 1870s, 80s, 1890s, it became very popular. It became a very popular, sometimes very ornate parlor instrument. So I have these pictures that I've seen of ladies, with long dresses and corsets and their hair all tied up, playing the banjo in the parlor. So, and as I mentioned, the guitar I was playing earlier with a smaller body was common. It wasn't very loud. Of course, mine's loud because it has a pickup in it. And I mean, an audio pickup, not a pickup truck, but a pickup. Okay, I'm sorry. All right. So anyway, and then the banjo made a lot of changes. Bluegrass was invented in the 1940s. People think it goes way back. It's based on old-time music, but it has a lot of blues influence. Blues also is an interesting thing. It came about, it emerged in the 1890s. It's not an ancient musical form. People keep trying to say that it's an ancient musical form. They keep trying to find evidence of this, but they can't. So anyway, anyway, I find this stuff interesting. Some people don't care about history, but I think when you know something about where your instrument comes from, it makes the music sort of music kind of come alive. You sort of find out more about the music you're listening to. Well, I know. Pardon me. This is really hard to. Excuse me. I've got a problem with this kind of pickup. It's really hard to unplug it. It's held together by a little Velcro strap. Okay, to continue to share my plan with you of how I'm going to try to get fired as the lowest form of college professor in Cedar Rapids. So, okay, I'm going to come out with a little parlor-sized guitar. And then, how am I doing for time there, Mr. Skopinski?
19 minutes.
Do you have something for us, too? You have a reading you'd like to do?
I have some poetry. But,
well, let me do this little thing here, and maybe we can have a little bit of...
yeah, because I can always bring mine. So.
We know what they say. If you keep, putting off till tomorrow, all you have is a bunch of empty yesterdays. I think that was from the Music Man. All right, so... The what? Oh, really? Oh, yeah. They laughed at my joke. It's a coincidence. I'm sorry. They're having a meeting in the next room. All right. So I'm going to have the stagehand, presumably the same one who brought me a banjo, come and take away my banjo and hand me this guitar. This is my Lamborghini Yellow DBZ Caballo, a Flying V. It's not very loud. I got a sound man this week, so if I'm tuning this one, tell some jokes, like while I'm tuning, like how do you get a heavy metal guitar player to turn down his amp? put a sheet of music in front of him. Okay. And so like that. But then I'll get down to serious. Thank you. Mr. Skopinski, sir, would you like to read something?
Sure, yeah.
clocks are all wonky here, so it's you have time. I can vacate the stage and you can have the microphone and read us something quick here. I was going to put this off to the side. I know some poetry too, but it usually rhymes with Nantucket, and I don't think this is a family show.
Well, you said have plenty of stuff, and if we have time, we could go into things. If not, we can just do one or two things. So with all the big snowstorm that's out on the East Coast, and of course we're in January, I picked some more winter poetry. I think I have a total of 5 here, but we won't read them all. Let's see. Well, we'll just play it by ear. Sometimes it's fun to kind of do things on the wing. Some of these, if they're not blatantly about winter, are at least set against a winter backdrop, or this time of year, the kind of the bleaker, darker days and stuff. So just randomly picking the top one here, this is by Thomas Hardy, who's known for his novels, the British writer. His dates are 1840, but he lived until 1928, so he had lived to a ripe old age, well into the 20th century. And this one is called The Darkling Thrush. I leant upon a coppice gate when frost was spectre gray, and winter's dregs made desolate the weakening eye of day. The tangled vine stems scored the sky like strings of broken lyres, and all mankind that haunted nigh had sought their household fires. The land's sharp features seemed to be the century's corpse outlayant, his crypt the cloudy canopy, the wind his death lament. The ancient pulse of German birth was shrunken hard and dry, and every spirit upon the earth seemed fervorless as I. At once a voice arose among the bleak twigs overheard, in a full-hearted evensong of joy illimited. An aged thrush, frail, gaunt, and small, in blast-beruffed plume, had chosen thus to fling his soul upon the growing gloom. So little cause for carolings of such ecstatic sound was written on terrestrial things afar or nigh around, that I could think there trembled through his happy good-night air some blessed hope whereof he knew and I was unaware. So a little stirring of warmth and hope from a darkling thrush amidst a bleak winter landscape. So I think after that, I think I'm going to go to Emily Dickinson, whose poem, it's called Like Brooms of Steel, and then I don't know what the meaning of this is, but in the title there are the numbers 1252 or 1252 or 1252 in parenthesis after it, so I don't know what that implies. But I think very much this is basically the same, saying the same thing as Mr. Hardy said, only in Emily Dickinson's very different and very compact and almost enigmatic style. And so this is Emily Dickinson, Like Brooms of Steel, 1252. Like brooms of steel, the snow and wind had swept the winter street. The house was hooked, the sun sent out faint deputies of heat. Where rode the bird the silence tied his ample, plodding steed? The apple in the cellar snug was all the one that played. So I think she's saying that while the whole world was shut down by winter, there was this one apple in her cellar, and it was just beaming with life against that winter backdrop. So I think we can do another one? Okay. The end of the show, according to that clock, will be 4 minutes after, so. All right, this is Wallace Stevens, continuing with another American poet, and he's a 20th century poet, 1879 to 1955. And this one is very Zen-like. This is probably the most enigmatic of the poems that I brought, and I just is very Buddhist or Zen-like. and this is called The Snowman. One must have a mind of winter to regard the frost and the boughs of the pine trees crusted with snow, and have been cold a long time to behold the junipers shagged with ice, the spruces rough in the distant glitter of the January sun, and not to think of any misery in the sound of the wind, in the sound of a few leaves, which is the sound of the land full of the same wind that is blowing in the same bare place. For the listener who listens in the snow and, nothing himself, beholds nothing that is not there and the nothing that is. So very Zen-like. So. By the way, I wanted to mention one other thing since you were talking about the banjo, and I think we've mentioned this on the show before because I've been listening to some Delius again in the last couple of days. He wrote an opera way back in the 1890s called Coanga, and he had come to America for several years. He lived in Florida on a repeat visit. He lived in Virginia. He was very much drawn to African American culture and music while he was here. And Coanga is based. It's kind of a Porgy and Bess thing. Is based on slaves, but from way back in the 1890s. And so he predates Gershwin by decades. And if I can remember correctly, the first use of a banjo in Western classical music is in Coanga, and that would be the 1890s. So I'll double check that fact for you, so. Yeah.
I find that extremely interesting. Of course I would, because that's what I'm into. We don't really know what to call, or they. I just dropped my banjo. Oh, well. What have I done? I think it's okay. Let's see if I can do it again. All right. I've got an adrenaline buzz right now. I've had that banjo 20 years at least. So anyway, well, I was saying that we don't know what to call what we might call classical music. Some people call it serious music. Then the singer-songwriter will always pop up and say, "I'm serious about my music." And of course, I don't mean to denigrate singer-songwriters. But of course, if you're a singer-songwriter, denigrate means put down. Anyway, I'm sorry. But I didn't mean that. Oh, yeah, just kidding. Okay. But I think, there are instruments that I'm very interested in. Banjo. Lately, I've been playing Stratocasters quite a bit. Fender Stratocasters. And so how about a concerto for, orchestra and... I don't know if I have time for you to read, man. Do you have something to read? Or? We're kind of low on time. Go ahead, do you have something nice there? Is it? We got 5 minutes. Well, that's 5 minutes according to my... How long does your reading take?
3.
Come on up real quick. I'll stand off to the side and I'll play the Tom's Guitar Show theme when you're done.
Well, hello. It's another Tom. I've been thinking about the weather. I slipped and fell for the first time in years yesterday morning on my way down here, and my question is, where's the real winter? We're in this in-between stage. It's like being trapped inside a giant snow cone machine of some kind. So I was thinking, instead of Iowa City, we could just call ourselves Icy City. And this is January, it's supposed to be the coldest month of the year. And we're not getting even real snow either. It's sort of, as I said, like snow cone snow. So that got me to thinking, winter, is supposed to be the time of year when our friends and relatives call us and say, how are you doing up there? I just was watching the Weather Channel, and it's so cold, and I heard about your snow and everything. One good snowstorm gets the phone ringing, and my brothers and sisters will call and say, how are you doing? And I said, well, don't you have anything to do other than watch the Weather Channel or out there? I imagine all of us have stories like that we could tell. My own favorite story was a couple of years ago. It was below zero. Well, I mean, a couple of years ago, it was last November. It was below zero. And somebody called to ask how I was doing, and I said that I was going out for a long walk along the river. And the response I got was similar to the sound you hear at a movie theater when a really scary thing happens on the screen, that kind of screech, you know. It seems beyond the imagination of people in warmer climates that we would stay here when the weather gets like that. Even more impossible is that there are aspects of winter we actually enjoy. So one thing I really enjoy is walking through downtown Iowa City when it's at night and the snow is falling. It's usually really pretty gorgeous. It's such a beautiful display that you see downtown. So then I got to thinking about Susan Toth, the author. She wrote a book. Her best-known book is called Blooming. It's about growing up in Ames, Iowa. Fascinating story. She celebrates winter in a book called Leaning into the Wind. She has great anecdotes about living through Midwest winters. One is an account of trying to get downtown to see the symphony on a snowy night. Another is a delightfully familiar account for any parent of dressing your child for the outdoors. You get the little cruiser all bundled up, and then they want to go to the bathroom. A third anecdote recalls a walk on an icy morning where every step had to be taken with care. Toth says she's not always enthusiastic about the weather. Sometimes, in fact, quote, I hate it. Then I want to flee. Now, at this moment, she writes. But in the end, she says there's nothing to compare with the magic of a Midwest winter. She wouldn't think of living anywhere else. Now, if we could just get to the real winter and not this in-between, we'd be doing pretty good. Thank you.
Very nice. We got 2 minutes. Well, I don't know what time it is. I checked the clock downstairs. Oh. This one's 4 minutes, so we could do. I have 6:59 on my $10 cell phone, so it must be right. Well. Well, I thank you for coming down, and those of you who tune in at home. I get to share my fantasies about trying to get fired as my job as a low-rent instructor at a small college in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, for insubordination for playing the banjo. And oh, by the way, where does a snowman keep his money? In a snowbank. Yeah, you knew that one. Of course you knew that one. He knows all those jokes. Cross a snowman in what? In a vampire? Uh-huh. Frostbite, yeah. I don't know if I have time for the Tom's Guitar Show theme. I don't know what time it is. I don't know if we're if I'm on TV anymore, but I'm just going to play this. been fun, folks. See you. All right. Thank you. And after the show, you always have to say, huh, my shoes. If they keep clapping, you say, huh, shoes again. Hey, look at your shoes. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, yeah.